Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.
Haha, so good afternoon. Welcome to today's A Coffee with Karen, a cup of positivity with just a sprinkling of woo-woo. This is my weekly radio show on Mintwave Radio and under our podcast network, Raising Vibrations, which is where I interview other coaches, consultants, therapists or healers who have a message, right, to be heard. It gives them an opportunity to share a little bit about what they do, who they help, how, maybe a little bit of why, maybe a little bit of sharing their story. Yes, most of them cover the mental, the physical, the spiritual perspective, or any kind of combination. At the end of the day, we need it all, right? So today's guest, well, I'll allow you to introduce yourself. Can you share a little bit about who you are and what you do?
Yeah, thanks, Karen. Some of this sounds really bizarre. I just say up front, honestly, this is all true. And and you will, some of you will have this bit going, it sounds like something is made up, so it's got some kind of interesting backstory. I encourage you, after the interview, to go on Google and use that wonderful resource to search for the names of things that I mentioned and validate for yourself that what I'm saying is real. Don't take my word for it, okay? Because some of it does sound a little bit batshit crazy.
Oh, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, well, my background's a bit of an odd one. I was born on the circus. And at the age of 3, which was back in 1978, well, I was 3 in a few months. It was before Christmas 78. I made my performance debut as Britain's youngest professional paid circus clown, Flap the Clown, with the obligatory big red nose, silly grey wig, and whatnot. And yes, there are embarrassing photographs on the internet if people want to go and find them. And I mean, I'm not necessarily going to say all of them were positive highlights, but some highlights of the first few years of performing, which are the things that kind of, because we're all a product of what's happened before, however far back in our life, as you already know, and as viewers and listeners already know. And some of the weird things that kind of went into the mix to making me who I am today were at the age of 4, well, very nearly 4, getting clouted around the head twice a day by a chimpanzee. As I was making my way with my dad to the stage, because although the circus normally you think of as performing in a tent, we also did certain shows where we didn't use the tent that everyone's used to, the big top. We were actually in theatres, and I remember the first. It must be because it's trauma-based that I remember. Although I've dealt with it, it doesn't upset me now. But I was young, and I remember New Brighton Theatre, and we'd have to go to the wings, the side of the stage, to be ready to go on after the act before us. But the act that had been, after us rather. No, before us. I'm getting confusing myself up. But obviously we'd go to the stage as the act before the act that was on stage was leaving, and that act was the Brooke Bond PG tea advert chimpanzees. The you know, if you go on, if you of an age,
Yes,
I'm feeling you don't look old enough. But they're on YouTube, the old adverts, and those chimpanzees, one of them would be guided off stage by a guy called Billy Day, who was the chimpanzee trainer, and we kind of cross each other, me and my dad, the chimp, and Billy Day, and we kind of got to the middle every day, well, every show, twice a day, without fail. We kind of got to the middle. Billy Day would turn to say, "Hiya, Tiz," to my dad, because he was known as Tizzy the Clown, and he'd go, "You all right, Billy?" And in that split second, the chimp would clout me round the head. Now, I found out since that it was being played, probably just being playful, because I was short, probably shorter than the chimp was, and that they've got such strength in their arms, chimpanzees, that if it had been being nasty, I'd have probably been knocked unconscious or worse. But I didn't know that at the time. So, it's related to me that every day, at least twice a day without fail, I'd end up going, "He's done it again, Dad." I suppose that was only a small trauma, but then I was playing hide and seek on the circus with the other circus kids. And this was when we were what they call tenting with the big top. So you've got all the trailers or caravans, as people may more commonly call them, that kind of make a semicircular thing, and then the fences up. So that the only way you can really get into the inside where the doors are for the trailers is if you let through the circus tent, or you can get past security, as it were. So it was safe for the general public, what I'm about to say. It just wasn't safe for me. We were playing hide and seek, and I went and hid under one of the trailers. Only what I didn't know is that chained up underneath this caravan was a well, not a baby, but a young, junior-aged puma, wild cat. Because I hadn't realised this was the lion tamer's, Martin Lacey Senior, who just turned 80 this year, his caravan. And the puma was somewhat dazzled by someone climbing underneath where it was, and promptly decided to, I'm told reliably, otherwise, again, I'd probably already be dead, to be playful, except that playfulness of tapping very early on ripped off my left ear.
Oh.
Which has been reattached. I've got scars on the back. I've got scars on my head, down my back. And ultimately, I was seconds away from being dead. But I was found in the nick of time by Martin Lacey Senior, and he got the puma off me. And
oh my goodness!
So slightly,
a little bit more trauma there. Now we started off with something, that to a 2-year-old still could be the same amount of trauma to the 2-year-old. To you now, that wouldn't seem like trauma, but to a 2-year-old, that would.
Well, until a time in my life when I dealt with the traumas that are stacked up, it still did feel, it's that thing until you deal. I'm sure other guests you've had on, and you're aware yourself, and many viewers and listeners are, the whole concept. I'm going to call it concept and construct, because there's no definite proof either way for lots of things that we do. But does it matter as long as our clients end up out?
Absolutely.
And one of the constructs is in a child therapy, and to deal with the trauma and stuff. And I did that. Well over a decade ago now, but up till then, I would have got really uncomfortable even talking about the getting whacked on the head. So there was some sort of anchored negativity. I promise there will be positivity here as well.
Yeah.
So, but the reason I'm sharing this is because it was a bit of an odd background. But, despite getting hit around the head by a chimpanzee, despite having my ear ripped off by a puma, despite years back, people didn't really always wear seatbelts when they should have done. I can't remember at what year it became law that you had to, but despite being involved in a road traffic accident where, fortunately, it wasn't that bad, but I was launched forward as a kid and smacked my head open on the windscreen. Despite all these things happening, the most, I kind of guess, probably most relatable to viewers and listeners, because I'm guessing there's very few, if any, who've been whacked around the head by a chimpanzee or had their ear ripped off by a puma.
No, I don't think so.
My background was slightly odd, but there'll be lots of people watching and listening whose backgrounds were slightly odd from the perspective of the people that they encountered when they went to school.
Okay.
And I was born on and brought up in the circus up to a certain point when my mum, who did not come from a show business background, kind of wanted me to have she perceived it normal upbringing. But as we know, what is normal? It's just a perceptional state of mind, you know. But to her, she wanted what was normal. So they're living in the house, they're going to one fixed school rather than going to a different one each week when you went from town to town. So by the time I was 6.5, that sort of region, she got away, and rather than me continuing to travel with the circus and perform every day, it became that I just performed at weekends, school holidays, and the rest of the time went to evenings sometimes, but went to a school of a normal sense, which that first school, I have to say, what was the school? Ainsworth Church of England School in Ainsworth near Bolton in England. And I have to say, anyone watching or listening this might chance upon this and think, I remember when that circus clown's son, who himself was kept appearing in the national press, because I was at a normal school. At that time, I ended up in the Daily Mirror newspaper with this Alex the Circus 6 hit was the headline, which again, they're all on Google, these things to back this up. And I've got to say, all the kids there were fantastic. Okay, so anyone watching this, if you were at school with me at Ainsworth CV School, thanks for being wonderful kids. I do not extend that thanks to the vast majority of the teachers.
Oh.
The teachers, obviously, when they saw me in the national newspapers and became aware that when I did shows, whether it be in the evenings, weekends, holidays, I was earning, I suppose, on a pro rata basis for the amount of time in for financial reward out, I was earning more than them. Some would say it was jealousy, some would say it was God knows, but I ultimately got, there's only one way to put it, bullied by the teachers, victimized, and life became a living hell. I really did not want to go into school. And I kept quiet about this for quite a while, but it got too much to handle. And so I did end up, in the end voicing this to, basically practically begging, can I not go to a different school? And it took some time, more months after, but we did end up, my mum did end up getting us to move from Ainsworth to a place called Haywood, which is where my dad was originally born, in Lancashire. Well, it's Greater Manchester, actually, but we always called it Lancashire back then. And I went to a different school, St. Luke's Church of England School in Haywood. Not that I'm religious in any way, by the way. No offence to anyone who is. I'm not personally, but for reasons. But there again, you know, when I get to why I'm not, you'll probably be sat there going, well, actually, what you've just described is kind of like religion, because I suppose it kind of is. But I went to a different school, and there were some people there that were absolutely fantastic. But first of all, let me clarify. The teachers there, it was brilliant. I stopped getting bullied. The teachers were bloody fantastic, okay? And there was some in particular, the headmaster, Peter Badley, he was so encouraging and supportive of me doing the performance stuff.
Did they know about your previous experience?
Do you know what? I'm not 1,000,000%. I would guess that my mum would have filled them in. Yeah, I'm.
So that might have helped the situation. That's all I'm from an outsider's point of view.
It might have done, but then obviously things kept appearing in the paper. I ended up on television for the first times when I was like 8, and the teachers were fantastic about it. As I say, Peter Badley, the headmaster, amazingly supportive. All the teachers were. Not all, but a significant enough number of the pupils, however, when I was being seen on television, and in the press it was coming out that I was, Britain's youngest circus clown and from a circus background. They then started bullying me. Not all of them, there's some really nice people as well. But this was daily, day after day after day, year after year. And it was not long before I was due to go to, in England we call it, I'm getting this right, secondary school. Mm-hmm. High school, I think they call it in America, for anyone who comes across this. It wasn't far off that era, so it was a good couple of years on. And one evening after school, and it must have been in England kind of October, November time, because it was dark dead early. Mm-hmm. And I mean really dark dead early, not just the rubbishy English weather that we have. And Queen's Park Road in Haywood is one of the busiest roads. I found myself lying down in that road with the thought that it'll all be over in a moment. And after what seemed like forever, but in realism was probably, it may have only been 30, 40, 50 seconds, but it seemed like forever. I actually got fed up and bored and stood up and started walking back to the pavement. And just as I put my foot onto the pavement, whoosh! Big articulated lorry went hurling past at like ridiculously way above the speed limit. And it was like that, the snap of the fingers, as quickly as that. Call it a wake-up call, call it whatever you want, a realisation. But in that moment, I knew, hang on a minute, that was bloody lucky. Slow down then to stop myself from swearing, because what I thought was slightly more severe. And
wow.
I thought, no, there must be another way to turn this around.
Right.
And synchronicity, don't worry, now it gets positive, people. I promise you. Synchronicity kind of must have kicked in around the same time, because I used to go to the library in Haywood, and by this time I kind of rebelled against my dad in the sense that I started to refuse to perform as Flap the Clown, because in my head it was that was causing me to be bullied, and it was all his fault. So I was refusing to do that. However, by this point, I kind of arguably become addicted to laughter and applause from an audience.
Right.
Because that was a time when it was a reward for having done something the right way. It was a time when that laughter, when it was meant to be, rather than Mickey taking bullying, and applause was in a context where it made me feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished and valued. And we'll go into that a bit more later, but all things that
you want more of.
Yeah, and we're totally kept getting knocked out of sync or felt lacking through the environment that I was getting from the bullying and stuff. So I wanted to grasp hold of this still, but I wanted to go.
Yeah, conflict.
What I saw as being, massive conflict. But by this time, I've been spending money I've been earning from doing the clowning and stuff on learning magic, conjuring tricks, Paul Daniels, David Copperfield, Penn and Teller style magic, just to make that clear, not ritual magic. Although I did study that. I did study that as well during the years, and there's nothing evil or satanic about it, unless the intention of the individual is to use it in that manner.
There you go, intention.
Yeah, the intent. That's what I learned from study. That the intent is such a massive key to
with anything.
Yeah, to what? Yeah, exactly. To what results you get.
Yeah.
So I also went to the library and got magic books out, but because I've been studying it for a number of years, the ones in the kids' library I was too advanced for, because at this time I was getting professional stuff. And in the adult library, they had a section called Sports and Pastimes, and it still is called that in England, Sports and Pastimes section, where they have hobbies stuff, and they also have quite often magic books, but ones that are at more advanced level. So it's one of my days when I'm choosing which of these books I'm going to take out for the next week to have a look at, and I kind of turn my head to the right slightly, and the spine of this book on the next section jumps out at me, and that's when I discover that just to the right or just below, depending on how big the shelves are, but really close by to Sports and Pastimes in the library, in the Dewey library book numbering system, was the popular psychology and self-help section. And I saw the spine of a book by a guy called Dale Carnegie. And it's kind of like it was there screaming out, pick me up, pick me up. And it was called How to Win Friends and Influence People.
Ah.
And it was like that. I was like, hang on a minute. If I knew how to win friends and influence people, I could stop the bullies from bullying me. Problem solved. Rock and roll. So I get the book. I read it. And it's an excellent book, by the way, for adults to use in the right context with other adults.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it doesn't work on kids or from one kid to another. And some of the things that seem like they might work, if you take it too literally, for example, Dale Carnegie says that, a person's name is to them the sweetest word in the language, and they'll love to hear it. But you see, way too many people after been on sales training conferences, they'll go into pubs, for example, meet a complete stranger. What's your name? Oh, Dave. Nice to meet you, Dave. Dave, I do. And they're chucking Dave in everywhere because they've took it so literally that word's going to be, make them more influential. And in actual fact, it ends up irritating Dave to the point where Dave wants to punch this person who's just done the sales course or the NLP course. And that's what I mean about taking it too. So it didn't work ultimately. However, there was a mention, I think it was in that book. I could be getting some books mixed up, but there was also a mention of a guy called Emil Coué, C-O-U-E, Coué, who's most famously known for the phrase, day by day, in every way, I'm getting better and better. He was, if you like, one of the grandfathers of positive affirmation, positive thinking, or some may even go as far as to say, planted the seed for the law of attraction and such things. And so I wanted to find out more about him. And again, perhaps synchronistically, coincidentally, perhaps it was the energies aligning, whatever you want to believe is fine. All that matters is that ultimately I ended up seeing a book again at the library that was, it was called something like, I don't remember 1,000,000%, but something like the power of positive self, not affirmation, there was another programming, the power of positive self-programming. Anyway, It was by Emil Coué, and it was telling you how to phrase things as though they've already happened, so that you condition your eventually it'll go past the conscious, past your critical faculty analytical area that causes that resistance into the unconscious, subconscious, call it what you will. I like to think of it as a personal laptop computer that needs positive software putting in there.
Yes.
And that through repetition over time of repeating this to yourself, at least in sets of 3, because first time consciously, second time it might awaken the critical faculty, third time the critical faculty, or the doorman of the mind, as I sometimes put it, gets fed up and goes for a tea break, so it got a chance of getting in to reprogram the laptop computer. But 3 sets of 3 is 9, and that's what it said in the book. Say it to yourself 3 times pause,
Ah.
3 times pause, 3 times pause. So you've got 3 by the power of 3. And do that morning, noon, and night. Morning when you've just woken up, which is the pompic state, as they call it in hypnosis and psychology. That moment you've just woke up, but you're not fully awake yet.
Mm-hmm.
Even before you pop to loo or go straight to loo, and while you sat on the loo, do the 9. Then during the day, when you're in a more conscious state, later on, lunchtime, whatever, and then in the evening, just before you close your eyes, or when you close your eyes to go to sleep, which we call the hypnagogic, G-O-G-I-C state, that transitional period between being awake and asleep, do it again. And over time, and there have been scientific studies done to show the power of this, it can change people's positive, the self-beliefs. And I started doing this, and this helped me feel better about myself and gave me more resilience and courage and strength, I suppose you could say. But also in his book, he talked about what in NLP and things they now refer to as, they come out with sayings like, what resists persists. You get more of what you focus on in life. So if you focus on the idea of, I hope I don't get bullied, in truth, you're allowing the idea that you'll get bullied to enter your head, and it's more likely you're going to give out that victim non-verbal body language to make yourself more of a target. You don't mean to, but looking back, I was doing that as well. That's not to say the bullies weren't to blame. Of course they were, but I was making it easier for them through focusing on, I wish this would stop, I wish it wouldn't happen. Whereas by changing it into thinking about it as though it's already occurred, so I'm each day I'm going to school and it's fantastic. I do the lessons and I get no conflict whatsoever. Focusing on how it would be were those things not happening, rather than I wish those things wouldn't happen, means that over time, not straight away, no, but over time through repetition, if you like, muscle memory, call it what you will, that becomes more of a self than occurring reality. But the big golden nugget was that he talked about the word try. He said, don't try and do something in your life, because try itself, the word implies that there's the possibility of failure.
Yes.
And you already know that everything you do, there's a possibility of failure, even something you've done 1,000,000 times and done it correctly. You're aware that you may one day slip up and accidentally do it wrong. So you don't need to be beating yourself up with negative programming all the time. Don't
Very
try.
true.
Do a Yoda from Star Wars. Although that wasn't, this book predated Star Wars, so it didn't mention that, but that's me adding that in. Do or do not. There is no try.
Yes.
And what do I mean by that? Well, the real golden nugget, aside from the mind state that I mentioned, was that he related what was called, it was at the time called suggestive therapeutics, or it would more commonly be recognized by people now as hypnosis, hypnotherapy, or stage hypnotism from the entertainment context. But years ago, it was suggestive therapeutics or mesmerism or suggestive magnetics. It had various different names, but it was the power of words to create thoughts that became beliefs in kind of simplistic terms. And one of Coué's ways of explaining how certain things worked was what became labeled Coué's law of reversed effort, which is that what resists persists. The more energy you put into something, the more likely it is to carry on negatively. So that is why you'll see stage hypnotists get people to put the hands together. Fingers of the left hand against the back of the right hand, the fingers of the right hand against the back of the left hand, palms pressed tightly together, thumbs down on top, and they'll mention things like they're locking, gluing, welding, cementing, bolting together. And now just try, prove to yourself it's worked, and just try to separate your hands. And that word try implies the possibility they won't be able to. So in that moment of doubt, they're more likely to then find it's harder than normal. And in that split second of finding it's harder than normal, it's a click of the fingers, that fast affirmation that, wow, what the hypnotist suggested to me and I imagined has just become my tangible reality. So at that point, it does become their reality, because the moment they consciously and subconsciously aligned tell themselves something is reality, that can change a belief system as quickly as that.
Incredible.
Which is the underlying key to changing people's habits, overcoming habits, addictions, fears and phobias and whatnot. But in terms of personal life, I was reading this and thinking, try to separate your hands. You can't. Try to open your eyelids. You can't. Hang on, nothing lost here. So next time I'm in school, the next day, when the bully comes up, pins me against the wall, or goes to pin me against the wall, well, does ultimately pin me against the wall, and then the next thing would have normally been some verbal onslaught while their cronies laughed away, and then they give me a slap or punch me in the stomach or whatever, and then walked off all laughing. I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose here, because, going to get it anyway. May as well give it a go. So the moment I got pinned against the wall, I said, what are you waiting for before you start talking crap? Or I don't know the exact words I came out with, but it was along the lines of, what are you waiting for? Rather than talking nonsense, why don't you just bloody hit me if you're going to hit me? Go on, try and hit me now. And ironically, I now know that the reason it worked, yes, it worked, positive news coming, may not have been just solely because I was using the word try, which in itself implied the possibility that it wouldn't be possible, which in itself seeded that element of doubt and confusion and disorientation into the mind of the bully, but also is the fact that this is what in NLP and other approaches and conventional psychology is called a pattern interrupt, because it did not fit the pattern they were expecting. Exactly, it was unexpected. So the two things combined, and a suddenly kind of glazed look, and anyone who's ever done hypnosis or certain forms of meditation or so will have recognized that there can be that sudden second where someone's eyes kind of glaze over. That's they've got into trance.
Right.
That happened, and then they suddenly kind of snapped out of that and just let go of me and went, shut up, you effing, there was lots of sweat, idiot, which was probably a way of letting out that frustration they had from the confusion, disorientation of the pattern interrupt. And they just said, effing shut up, don't come anywhere near me, told their entourage to follow them, and they never went near me after that day.
Wow.
Now, that's not to say there's not been times in life where I've encountered other people that have said things that they shouldn't have. We all have, but it stopped. It made the rest of secondary school bearable.
Wow.
So things that, that may sound so simplistic that, really, can something that simple have that much power? Well, the truth is, it doesn't have to be complicated.
We overcomplicate it, don't we? I know I have a habit.
We all do. And, even those of us that have worked for years with massive success, helping other people, still end up, it's the plumber analogy, the plumber who never gets around to fixing his own taps. It still does happen. And if I've got one message for everyone is, don't try, do or do not. There is no try, but actually make a point of spending a bit more time for yourself, for relaxation, a bit more time for yourself to whatever it is you need to deal with, so that you yourself will end up feeling better. But you know what? Ethically and morally, I'd almost argue, it will help them put you in a position where you're able to give more. Here's a little bit of woo-woo. Positive vibes, positive intent, positive energy, rather than non-verbally, consciously being there trying to help your client, but non-verbally thinking about, will I get enough clients this week to be able to pay the mortgage? And other worries as we live in this time of cost of living. And, you know, if you've got issues like that running in your mind, then one obvious thing you could be doing is going and looking at Karen's website, because she obviously helps people to build their business. You've got to do something different than what you're currently doing. And if you keep doing what you've always done, you keep getting what you've always got. Do something different. Work on yourself, because it goes back to what I said before. All of us are a product of what's gone before. And more often than not, any habits, addictions, fears, phobias, emotional issues, whatever that occur, may occur because of something that's happening to you right now or happened recently in life, but it's only because of your reaction and inability to handle it at this time that meant that you felt you needed the escape of smoking or the drug of choice or the anxiety or panic attack reaction. But the truth is that inability to react in a manner that means you didn't need it not being there, the ability to go, it's okay, I can get over this, is not because of that in the moment incident. It's because of everything that led you up to that point. And a lot of that will have happened when you were young. And I'm not talking sick mind fraud, kill your father, fuck your mother. I'm not talking about all that Oedipus complex stuff and all that, because, you know, yeah, that's happened to some people, but the minority in the grand scheme of things. And that's not to poo-poo anyone that's gone through sexual abuse. Most definitely not. It's abhorrent, and that's something that you need to go through a healing process with. But for the majority of people, what will have caused the problems is things that, as you alluded to before, Karen, at the beginning, you know, looking at it now, getting tapped, as I would probably think of it now, by the chimp, otherwise I'd have been unconscious. Not really that massive of a deal, slightly annoying, but at the time brought me to tears. It's like I'm getting bullied by a creature that's hairy me, that's struck. So at the time, the way it got stored into the personal laptop computer was one with trauma and negative emotions. And you could say, if you're into your energy healing, negative energies trapped in that memory in that moment. And we all have things, even if it's only being told, no, don't do that, don't touch that, as a kid.
Could be one remark.
That to us now as adults, we'd look back and go, that cannot possibly be what's causing me now to have this habit, addiction, fear, or phobia. But let me tell you, it can be, because it can have frozen almost in time. I'm going to use the metaphor of the inner child, frozen the inner child in time at a moment of feeling, or rather not feeling, fully loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued. And those things all sound very similar. But if you get a thesaurus and check out the meanings, some of them relate to some things, some relate to others. And those things they relate to are your levels of self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, or self-control, aka willpower. So if there's any imbalance happen when you were young, so any thing that was traumatic at the time that's been frozen in the personal laptop computer, and we've all got more than one, but they're all things that when we finally find out about them as an adult, we do end up laughing at generally and going, why is that affecting me like that? Well, it's because it's your inner child inside making it happen. Inner child could be substituted for unconscious, subconscious mind. The one and the same kind of. Okay, let's not get caught in complexities. The point is there's some negative program running that now as adults, if we could just go back and be there, we just laugh at it. Yeah, exactly. We just laugh at it, and the laughter would release it positively and permanently. But instead, it's caused us to, on some level, at that moment, not feel loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, or valued. So therefore, it's had a knock-on effect in the long term as things have compounded on our self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, and or self-control. It can be one or more of these. It's different for everyone. That's why we're individuals. But if there's any imbalance in any of them, it will have a knock-on effect on your self-love, self-worth, self-respect, and positive selfishness. And that's the looking after yourself so that then you can look after others better. It's the oxygen mask on the aeroplane analogy of put yours on first, although it seems selfish, because that way you're not going to pass out and you can make sure you get them all on your kids. And if there's any negative impact on them, then it will have a knock-on effect on your self-identity, or ID for short. So yes, consciously, as we are now, is our conscious mind, the ego. And these programs that have been stored are the ID, the id. If anyone's done conventional psychology, they talk about the ego and the id. Maybe a different way of understanding it, the way I just mentioned. So it's become my experience, and I found it helpful for myself as well. And this is the real message I want to give everyone, and hopefully they can, run this process for themselves. Our job as therapists, well, it depends on what you do. It might be to rub points on people's feet. If you're a reflexologist, it might be to give them a massage in a certain way. It might be that you say certain words in a certain way to help reprogram their laptop computer if you're a hypnotherapist. It doesn't really matter what the modality is, or what the teachings of that modality tell you need to do. The truth is that all of them, whatever they are, if it's about helping a client overcome a habit, addiction, fear, phobia, emotional issue or something, to reverse something from negative to positive, then we all have a few things in common. And I believe that the key thing we need to do is help our clients end up feeling, whether both consciously and unconsciously, loved, wanted, needed, appreciated, cared for, cherished, and valued, so that when those things are balanced out and are on an even keel, it will have a knock-on effect of increasing their self-confidence, self-image, self-esteem, and self-control. So it will have a knock-on effect of increasing their self-worth, their self-love, their self-respect, and their positive selfishness, so that it will have a knock-on effect of repairing their self-identity and filling that hole or gap that clients often end up saying that they felt like something was missing. So they were filling it through, a smoke screen of smoking, or drowning their sorrows. So by making them feel those things, it has all those knock-on effects. You can watch the video or listen again. I won't repeat them. To help them fill that hole, to help them repair their self-identity. There's many ways of doing that, and many, many techniques that I teach in my courses at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. But one of the most powerful that everyone can kind of implement for themselves is that I get clients to close their eyes, and before they do, I tell them that I'm going to hand them something. And in truth, what this is, and I show them, it's a big, nice, big, fluffy, big cushion or pillow. That's what it is. They know in advance consciously before they close their eyes that's what it's going to be. But they were just going to have a bit of a role play. Don't worry if that sounds daft. And I get them to close their eyes, or you can do this on your own. And I get them to take some time to think of anything they can possibly think of when they were younger that may have upset them at the time. However ridiculous it may seem now as an adult, knowing it seems ridiculous as an adult consciously doesn't help overcome the trauma that got stored on the computer, because it's there on the hard drive. It got trapped with emotion, so it needs some level of emotion, not trauma, but it needs some level of emotion to release it. Okay? This ties in with state-dependent memory and learned behavior in conventional psychology. It's like when athletes get into the zone, they're of a certain state of mind and body. And if we're doing sports psychology, if we can identify the physical way they stand when they're in that zone, and make them consciously aware that they do that, then they're more likely, because it's anchored and conditioned together, to slip back into the psychological state of being in the zone and play better golf or better football or whatever. But I tell people, if you can think of something great, but if you can't, just know and just trust in the fact that there were things that did upset you when you were younger. Along the way, when you were 1, 2, even in fact, when you were a baby, when you were 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if you're with the right client who's into their woo-woo, they may even want to entertain the idea or verbalize the idea that they've lived before, in which case this would be a time you could mention if you wanted, if it felt right for that client. And that's another key, making it right for the individual in front of you, that, you know, there were things that you may be carrying over from previous lifetimes. But in any event, in this lifetime, as a youngster, they affected you, things got compounded. Even if you can't clearly remember them, you know, this is not about you reliving them, being in the moment and being re-traumatized by them. Far from it. But I want you to see the scared young you within you, metaphorically. The young you that wishes they'd known then all the things you know now. Because consciously you know that the things that upset you when you were young, you'd probably laugh at now or deal with differently. But unfortunately, you didn't know the things that you know right now then. And they kind of got trapped in that moment. So I want you to imagine, as I hand you this person to put on your lap, and they know it's the cushion or the pillow, or that's the moment when you get your cushion or pillow, that it's the young you, the mini you, who's probably holding a load of self-blame, shame, guilt, regret, remorse, maybe even some anger in there at, why didn't you help me? Why couldn't I deal with it differently at the time? Then I wouldn't be frozen in this, you know, in older Alex's mind and holding them back and ultimately being the underlying cause of these habits, addictions, fears or phobias or whatever the issue is. And you actually say to yourself, as though you're saying to the younger person, well, hugging, so that there's a psychosensory experience going on. In my case, I would say my birth name's Alex, my stage name's Jonathan Royle, so but use that you identify with most. And I'd go, imagining that I'm seeing the younger me. I'm sorry. And you leave it a short while. And you will, when you do this yourself with your eyes closed, holding, imagining that you're talking to them, you will end up starting to feel emotions. And you won't necessarily know why. You don't need to consciously either. Or just allow that to be a sign and a signal that a process is taking place. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. Thank you. I love you. I'm here for you. I'm sorry. It may seem like I wasn't there, but I always will be now. We can get through this together. And some of those things people might recognise as being part of it, all the elements there of the Hawaiian, Ho'oponopono, but there's a few extras. But you're doing it, apparently, imagine that simple process alone. I've seen clients galore end up having a massive catharsis moment where, you know, the tear gates open. They don't really know why they end up crying most of the time.
But
they don't
good
remember.
to release.
They feel so fantastic. And in the moment, you can physically see people ending up looking younger as well. But more importantly, afterwards, it's kind of like a factory reset button's been pressed. Those things that were frozen in time no longer are, as a ripple effect. And they find that, you know what, they no longer need, want, crave, or desire for cigarettes or tobacco, or they go, you know what, you're right, I don't feel like I want cocaine anymore, or you know what, I do feel motivated now to actually get to the gym, do some more exercise, and take more control of what I'm eating. And they notice that then also, because they've been carrying around shame and guilt and regret that they weren't aware of, that alone, the release of it, helps the weight disruption. So it can have something so simple. Something so simple can have a massively life-changing effect for people. That's my big message. I want, and that people need to do a process like that on themselves. However good a therapist you are at helping other people, all well and good. But I promise you'll become even better just by running processes like that on yourself, because then you'll be able to fulfill your own potential even more, and and just handle everything in a far more positive. I promised you it
Right.
in a far more positive frame of mind, body, spirit, however
Well, it's
you want to get
having
with
a
it.
total effect, and I love the fact that you're and it, you know, this is what I feel that works so well is not just one modality. It is the combining, it's that combination. Like you said, you've added things in, plus it's the physical that, you know, we know that it has being hugged, releases, you know, there's
Oxytocin.
yeah, there's things going on in the body. There's processes going on in the body. So it is that link. So it's not just the thought, it's combined with the feeling, something that's, and then physiological processes that are going on in the body. And then that release makes sense. That's how we should release stress, the stress hormone or other things, is through an actual action. So that whole combination sounds incredibly powerful. But where you said it is simple, but this is what, you know, I find so frustrating with some people. Like the first thing you said about doing things in threes, and it's simple, it's free, you can do it on your own. No, you know, no one has to be around to see you if you know, if you're worried about that. And yet, if you were to say to somebody that can change your life, and they still won't do it.
Because it seems too good to be true when we talk about it. And that's why, as you said, sadly, the vast majority of people don't. But that's the difference that makes the difference.
It is.
Actually doing something, taking action of some form.
You've just given two incredibly powerful tools that could probably solve an array of issues if people just took time out. That whole process, what would you say, the whole thing together, the 3-3-3 and that process, 10 minutes?
Yeah, I mean, at most 10 minutes, And if you're doing it in once you've done the inner child thing, you only need to do that once properly. So then on a daily basis, it's literally only maybe a couple of minutes when you wake up, a couple of minutes when you've locked yourself in the toilet cubicle at work in the afternoon, maybe, and a couple of minutes just before you go to bed. There's really no excuse not to allow yourself that time to improve yourself, to feel better, to give yourself that metaphorical pat on the back or the hug, which obviously, as you said, is built into holding that, because the mind, although consciously you know you're hugging yourself, the unconscious doesn't. So you still release the oxytocin, which is one of the body's feel-good chemicals. And as you've correctly pointed out, I've structured it so that's anchored, combined, call it what you will, with positive things you're telling yourself psychologically, so that both become greater than the sum of their parts.
Brilliant.
And that's what I like to do. And all the stuff at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com, there's a free 4-hour video where I go over that, what I call Royle psychological pillars, and then go into more depth and relate it to how it relates to all different areas and modalities of complementary alternative medicine. And because I come from that magical background and circus background, where in the circus, some of the things look really, really dangerous. And some of them definitely are. If you fell off a flying trapeze, you could die. But ironically, some of the things that look dangerous aren't as dangerous as they look when you know the secret. And on the flip side, some of the stuff that doesn't look that dangerous can actually prove lethal.
Right. Perception is all down to perception, isn't it?
That's where I learned about perception, and that things aren't always what they appear. And then when I got into the magic tricks and stuff, I learned about misdirection, making people look one place and think one thing rather than what was going on. So that when I started learning hypnosis, I was looking at it through the eyes of someone who had this, and I was looking for the trick, the shortcut. And what I'd done with everything at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com is there's techniques there that people using them or looking at them would go, that's taught in all conventional hypnosis courses. And yes, it is, but not the way I teach it. Because they will tell you, for example, that there's a thing known as arm catalepsy, and that's the idea of using suggestion while someone's in hypnosis to make all the muscles in their arm become stiff rigid from the shoulders to the elbows, to the wrists, to the fingertips, and that their arm will stay out for however long you wanted without them feeling any pain or discomfort. And then it can be used within the therapeutic process to suggest to them that all negativity is leaving their mind, traveling down their arm, and then to the fingertips, that when you tap them on their arm, it'll go loose and limp like a rag doll. And as it flops down, all that negativity will come out of the fingertips and drop down through a kind of drain that's in the floor and then move away and be gone completely. Loads of metaphors in there, this, that,
Brilliant.
the other. But they're saying it's purely suggestion. And if you do it the way that most conventional courses teach, yes, it is. And therefore, you do run a potential risk of the individual getting some arm fatigue and feeling tired, depending on how suggestible they are. Well, I like to make sure that when we're dealing with clients, we can't fail. So I found if you get them to make a fist, which is perfectly logical to do, because we lift up their arm with their eyes closed. I want to imagine it's like a stiff iron bar, and I pull it out in front of them. And I say, now make a fist. If you make that fist, it's almost as though you're punching forward to your bright new future. So I'm kind of, in a bizarre metaphoric way, made it sound like there's a purpose to this. The real purpose to making the fist is the more they make that fist, the more it tightens up all the muscles of the arm anyway. But in a manner that, because they've made a fist there, they can keep their arm in that position without feeling any discomfort a hell of a lot longer than they could if they had it in the
right. Good
position.
combo.
Also, when you made that fist and you leave it there, I know I talk to them and have them imagining the negativity coming down from their shoulders to the elbows, to the wrist, into the fist, all that negativity, all those things that used to bother you in the past are now leaving your mind, leaving your body and running down into that fist. When you know it's all there, really, it gets tighter and stiffer, your fist. And no, mate, the fist stiffer because you've told them to. Do that for the length of time we've done it here. Try it, rewind the video and do it. And then let go of the fist quickly, which is what's going to happen in a minute. And notice what a sense of relief you feel, genuine physical relief. Now, that happens at the same time as saying when I tap you on the wrist, that very moment, that very second, that very instant, just allow your arm to drop down in your lap like a loose, limp rag doll and allow your fist to open and all that negativity to drain out and drop to the floor and go through the imaginary drain you see in your mind. Nod your head if you understand. When they nod their head, they're basically saying yes, they'll drop their arm. So I then tap them, they open the hand, it all drops down as one, kind of like.
Brilliant.
But what really helps is the fact that when they release that, it does feel a genuine feeling of physical release, which happens at the same time as the metaphoric psychological suggestion of release. And as you spotted before with the hugging technique, combining the two makes it more powerful than
massively. This is what I see from, when I interview all these wonderful people like yourself with having different tools in their toolbox. And it is when we mix, there is not one way. The power seems to be when we combine the mental, physical, spiritual. It's all right. And it seems to me such a shame that some of these specific modalities can be so rigid. No, this is the way we teach it. And I felt it coming from a physical therapy background. I was, there's osteopathy, chiropody, chiropractor, sports therapist, physio, all these different people thinking their way is the right way, acupuncture, when actually, oh man, if everybody was taught the whole thing, the whole combination, you could treat that person in a holistic way and do such a grand job. It just seems a shame. So what you're doing is
egos get in the way, Law. People who are running courses go, my way is the way, which is almost religious.
You're absolutely right. The ego.
If everyone just accepted the truth, or at least what I believe to be true, test it for yourself. But it's my belief that yes, okay, hypnotizing somebody may in itself, the relaxing bit, have an element of benefit, fine. Or if you want to believe that crystals have energies, whatever, push all that aside a minute. What all modalities have in common is that somebody, the client, has an issue, and that issue has come about, I would argue, because of their inability at a certain time to handle certain things. And that inability came about because of being frozen in a moment in time, the inner child type thing we spoke about. Now, there are many ways to deal with the metaphoric inner child. You don't necessarily have to say it as the inner child for those that want to, from spiritual backgrounds. It could be seeing your guardian angel. But there has to be a process take place that deals with the blocks. You don't have to re-examine the traumas or relive them. In fact, I find that pretty abhorrent and pointless.
Yes.
I term it as being mind rape unnecessarily on clients, and that probably generally speaking, most of the people who do that kind of approach are only doing it because they believe they should because of what they were taught.
Absolutely.
Or some of them do it because they realize that doing that means they have to see a client for
ever.
So they don't have to then spend some time on learning marketing, advertising, publicity, and promotion to keep the clients coming in, because they just try and keep hold of the clients they have got forever.
Yes.
But once they've done the things we spoke about, dealt with their own issues to a degree, they won't feel the need to do that as much. And then perhaps they could examine this idea, which is that all of it, and this is not a negative, all of it's ultimately just an important, seeming ritualistic process to trigger off the placebo response to create a placebo effect. And people generally go, placebo, what I do is better than placebo. No, hang on. You miss the point. It doesn't matter whether it's tapping yourself, following a wiggly pen, EMDR. It doesn't matter if it's hypnosis, reflexology, or even open heart surgery from a proper medical, conventional medical doctor. All of them, provably, when you push your ego aside, the recovery of the client happens as rapidly and positively in direct proportion to how well the person's, I'm going to use a doctor's term, bedside manner is.
Yes.
Or in therapy, we might say to what level of trust, belief, and rapport the client's got with you, and in the process, how important it seems and credible, which is why your social proof, things that Karen will teach you about in marketing, social proof, no good just having a photograph of someone with a bit of a text saying this changed my life, because these days people will go, how do I know that that's not just a photo they bought? You need videos these days, and people need to be able to see facial expressions, emotions, so then their belief is built up, and that's our job, to build up the potential client's belief and expectancy of whatever process you do working.
Expectancy
to such a degree,
an expectation. That's those are the powerful things. What you're doing is phenomenal. So your website, ultimatehypnosiscourse.com, is that for the general public, or is that for practitioners? Both?
Everybody. It's a package of stuff. Here's the weird thing. I'm a little bit odd here. And yes, you will immediately be thinking to yourself when I say this, Karen, what a bad business model. And I tell you what, for viewers and listeners, this is a bad business model.
No, I have a feeling you're going to be similar to me.
Well, I could have a kind of, this is aimed at people for self-help personal development package out there, and then one that's for people to learn hypno mind tricks like I spoke about, and combining things together to improve on what they already know, and then a separate one that's do you want to add the modality of hypnosis and NLP into what you already do? And I could have all these different packages. And actually I do on a site that I don't bother promoting, and it was there years ago. In more recent years, I plug here where people can get access to a 4-hour video immediately. They don't even have to book, there's no email harvesting involved, which is a bad model, because I recommend you always give something away and get someone's email address so you can market to them again. Not going to happen. You're going to go to that page and you're going to find the videos there without any need to put any personal details in. And it will build on the Royle psychological pillars. And during that 4 hours, you will decide either this guy's lost the plot, or you'll think, well, yeah, he's onto something, but you know what? I don't want to go any further with this. Or you'll think, oh, I'd love to learn more about this. And if you do, there'll be no reason to contact me to ask for something else or wait for an email to come through, because it won't happen because you've not put it in. Everything's on that one page. And the thing is, it doesn't matter if you're a therapist wanting to learn hypnosis, or you're a therapist wanting to learn the mind tricks to integrate with what you already know, or you want to use it just for yourself, your own personal development. It's all in that one package. And then there's nothing else that I sell. Anything new that I release gets put into what I call the Elite Hypnosis Bootcamp for free, because you're a member for life. Anything new I release gets put in there. There's never any upsells, because my big passion now in life, although my passion is this and helping people, I never really set out intending to have a career as a mind therapist and a stage hypnotist. But by the time I was 14, I was a qualified diploma-bearing hypnotherapist and seeing clients for money. I was still doing the odd magic show and things. But what I really thought I was going to end up being was a stage magician and mind reader. And I do some of that still on what would be considered more of a hobby now and again level. But it's something I'm moving into more and want to do more of. So I've reached that. This is the biggest bit of woo-woo, and it sounds cheesy, but I reached that point where if I knew that people would actually attach value to it, I'd probably give everything away that was at ultimatehypnosiscourse.com. But I found over the years that if there isn't at least some kind of token investment,
yes, unfortunately it is.
People don't get off their arses and take
action.
Won't do it.
They won't do it. And again, I would say on the woo-woo front of that, it's all energy, right? Even money is energy. So if there's no transference, if there's some kind of a block, it's not good. It's got to be flowing. So there must be something that we can't see, or we can't perceive with our mind right now about why that is so. But there's definitely something going on there, because with all the will in the world, I've given stuff away for free where I've really wanted to help that person. And unfortunately, it's the ones who pay for it will do it. And that is the way it goes.
Yeah. There has to be some commitment on some level.
Got to be some commitment. I could sit here and listen to you for hours. What a fascinating story. So to the listeners, anybody, I'm definitely going to come and have a look. So I love that combination. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for inviting me, Karen. It's been an absolute pleasure.
And to the rest of you, I'll be back next week with a Coffee with Karen. Bye for now.
Welcome to the Coffee with Karen podcast, a weekly chat show discussing everything from holistic health to current affairs from a mental, physical and spiritual perspective. Get your weekly cup of positivity with a sprinkling of woo-woo.